Hey there, I hope you're doing well. My name is Arya and today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy Reddit stories, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe hitting that notification bell too. Let's get started with today's first story. Much love, everyone. Today's first story comes from cheating wife exposed affair with boss in front of shareholders. I've always been drawn to architecture, from sketching buildings and school notebooks to earning a degree. My goal has been to create spaces that inspire. Along the way I met Sally, who believed in my vision, and together we built a successful architectural firm. My best friend David joined us and became crucial to our success, managing projects and ensuring my designs were executed properly. Everything seemed perfect until one day, while adjusting a project, I caught a news report about a liquidation in Ocala. To my shock, the footage showed Sally and David leaving a motel room together. Sally had left work early, claiming to run errands, while David said he was in Gainesville. The betrayal hit hard. 14 years of marriage and a decade of friendship all called into question. Our firm had grown rapidly, especially after winning a City Hall Design Award. We expanded our team to 12 architects, moved into a new 7-story building, and enjoyed steady profits from rented office space. I had invested the most, followed by Sally and David, and things were going well until that afternoon. The distance between Sally and me had grown over the years due to my long work hours, but I never doubted her love or loyalty. However, the motel footage stirred confusion. I contacted my friend George, who worked at the TV station, and asked for a copy of the broadcast. When I reviewed the footage, it confirmed what I feared. Sally and David had been caught kissing at the motel. I reached out to Tom Noble, the motel's owner, to check the surveillance footage. He said the police had already taken the tapes, but I could view them at any time. I made arrangements to see the recordings immediately, bracing for what they might reveal. I shut down my computer, told my secretary I was leaving early, and asked her to inform security once everyone had left. I watched the surveillance video. I saw Dave arrive at the motel first, get the key and enter room 116. Sally showed up a few minutes later and went in after a while. A man with a weapon ran past their room, followed by the police. Then it was quiet until the TV crew arrived. The footage showed Sally and Dave kissing before they left the room. I asked the motel clerk if he knew them. Sure, they come here every week, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. He said they have been regulars for 2 years. I took a copy of the video and headed home, forming a plan. I couldn't let them know I was aware of their affair, yet I needed time to figure everything out, especially if they were also stealing from the business. I decided I needed a forensic audit. Fortunately, we were scheduled to attend a Southeastern Architects Association meeting in a week, and I planned to use that time to investigate. With my secretary Marge going on maternity leave, I thought of Debbie, her replacement. She was intelligent, capable, and even proposed setting up a childcare room in the office, building an idea Sally and Dave both liked. I needed to talk to Debbie more and involve her in my plan. Despite everything, I still couldn't believe Sally and Dave were betraying me. Sally was always affectionate, telling me she loved me multiple times a day. Dave also acted deeply in love with his wife Mary. I had to act convincingly tonight at dinner to avoid suspicion. Dinner went smoothly, though Mary mentioned the liquidation at the Nobility Motel. Sally flinched, but Dave stayed calm, asking if it was the place we had worked on before. I suspected Mary knew about the affair and was subtly provoking them. I had to keep my cool after dinner. We were all cleaning up. Sally was washing dishes and Dave was drying. Mary and I were bringing in items from the patio. As we entered, Sally and Dave were chatting quietly. Mary joked, "What are you two planning, sneaking off once JN and I are asleep?" They both jumped and Sally laughed, joking that sneaking around was the only way they got any love, adding that Dave was too scared of being caught by Mary. We all laughed, though I couldn't shake my unease. Once Mary and Dave left, I asked Sally if there was something going on. She looked at me with her usual affection, denying anything was wrong, saying she loved me and was ready to start trying for a baby. I couldn't figure out what to believe. She seemed so sincere, but I felt torn. I went upstairs and she was already waiting for me, acting as though nothing had changed, but the guilt and confusion overwhelmed me and I ended up getting sick. Sally tried to comfort me, but I couldn't bear to look at her. I quickly dressed, grabbed my keys and left the house, not sure where to go. I eventually stopped at a cafe, needing time to think. My phone rang. It was Sally, but I ignored it and ordered a coffee. Lost in my thoughts, I wondered how I hadn't seen the signs of my marriage falling apart. As I sat there, Debbie, my new assistant, saw me and offered to listen. She shared that she had been through difficult times with her own family and understood tough situations. I hesitated, but eventually told her everything about Sally's affair with Dave and how I couldn't believe it, especially with how often Sally said she loved me. Debbie, still holding my hand, suggested that Sally might have a problem similar to her sister who loved her husband, but couldn't stop cheating. Her sister's situation ended in divorce and illness. Debbie reassured me that people can change, but she emphasized the importance of getting answers. Did Sally love Dave? How long had the affair been going on? Why hadn't it stopped? She recommended I start by getting a detailed summary of Sally's phone calls, which might help me understand more. This young woman was sharp and I decided to trust her since she already knew most of what was going on. I told her I'll pay you to help me gather the information I need. She laughed. I'll help you, but I don't want your money. Friends don't charge. Friends. All right, friend, but call me John. Outside of work, we'll keep things normal at the office. I asked her to find an investigator and a forensic accountant. I explained that Sally, Dave, and I would be at a meeting in Atlanta for a few days. If you are enthusiastic about this narrative, please inform us. If you found the video enjoyable, please press A. If you do not have the desired option, please press B. Your feedback serves as a great source of inspiration for me to collect more uplifting and profound stories. I gave her a company credit card to cover expenses and explained when and where Sally and Dave met, suggesting hidden cameras might be useful. Debbie smiled. I may need some cash for a babysitter. Use the card. You can withdraw up to $300. The limit is $10,000 and I'll give you the PIN. I thanked her, saying I won't forget what you're doing for me. I take care of my friends. She smiled softly. I trust you completely. I felt a weight lift off my chest. As I looked at her, she was impressive. I started to think maybe the trouble with my wife was partly my fault. I needed more information to see if it was something we could fix. Debbie then shared more about herself. Her father had been a cop who was tragically eliminated afterward. She moved in with her strict uncle. Her sister rebelled and disappeared, returning years later with a husband and baby. Debbie, meanwhile, graduated as valedictorian and quickly worked her way up in a department store, becoming a manager at just 18, but an attack at a work party left her pregnant and unemployed. Despite her challenges, she kept going, raising her daughter on her own. I admired her resilience and told her, if you ever need anything, just let me know. What are you studying? Business administration, but tuition's tough and my savings are running low. I joked, sweetie, I have a proposition for you, and offered to pay for her college in exchange for a contract to work for me. During and after her studies, I explained that her pay would increase with her GPA. She was excited, saying, wow, I won't disappoint you, John. Just don't call me Mr. outside of work. As she left, she gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, a tear running down her face after she left. I noticed her bill was only $250, so I paid for both of us the next morning. I heard Debbie's heels clicking down the hall. She paused at my office door with a bright smile. Good morning, boss. Good morning, Debbie. Come on. And she placed 3 $1 bills on my desk and grinned. I stopped by the cafe this morning to pay for last night, but they said the check was already paid. You must have covered mine. I laughed. Yeah, I did, but it was only $250. You tipped too, didn't you? Yeah, I guess I did. I handed her an envelope. Here's the credit card. The PIN is inside. Start on those projects. We discussed I'll tell Mar you're working on the daycare plan, so you can take your time. Sound good? She smiled, taking the envelope. Yes, Sir John, I'll report back later. If I'm done before the day is over by noon, Debbie returned with an envelope. Here's everything you requested. Let me know if it works for the audit. I need to confirm by tomorrow. For this weekend, I'll also need to bring my daughter Dolly with me for the surveillance setup. Should I come back in an hour? She asked. I assured her I'd have answers soon and smiled as she left. Then I buzzed Sally. Hi honey. What's going on? Sally answered, not much. You didn't go out for lunch? I asked. No, too busy. I'm getting payroll ready early since we're leaving for Atlanta on Friday. Is everything set with Dave and Mary? Yep. Are you feeling better? Today you seemed off last night. I replied, yeah, I'm good now. By the way, that girl Debbie dropped off some daycare info. She's sharp. I mentioned. Sally teased, she sure is. Should I be worried about her around you? I laughed. Why, you've never worried before. Besides, she's way too young. If I were 20 years younger, though maybe. Sally laughed too. She's a cutie, that's for sure, and her daughter is even cuter. That struck a nerve as I wanted a baby too. Later that afternoon, Dave stopped by. I asked him, are you ready for a heck? Yeah, Dave said, then added, Sally told me you weren't feeling well last night. You all right? Yeah, just something I ate. I replied with a grin, as if I could ever cheat on Sally. She'd liquidate me. Dave chuckled, but seemed slightly uncomfortable. She loves you. She'd never cheat, maybe, but under the right conditions. Anyone might. She has plenty of admirers. I said. True, Dave agreed, but she's yours. The conference went well, though I was nervous. I called Debbie D and she confirmed she had all the info. I needed Sally and I were busy with activities and, though exhausted, we had a good time after the last day's events. We returned home Sunday evening, while sitting in the back seat with Mary. I noticed Sally repeatedly pushing Dave's hands away while she drove. She glanced back at us, but I pretended to be asleep under my cap. After a moment, I saw her signal to Dave, who turned around to check on us when I closed my eyes and reopened them. Dave was sitting closer to Sally and I could hear her softly moaning. I sat up and asked, where are we now? They both jumped. Sally replied, we just entered Florida. We're looking for a pit stop so Dave can take over driving. At that moment, I knew my marriage was over. The rest of the drive was quiet. After stopping for fast food, we returned home, unloaded the car and went to bed. Sally snuggled up and quickly fell asleep, but I couldn't after lying awake for an hour. I called Debbie, who answered right away. How did things go? I asked. Smoothly, she said, but I suspect tomorrow will be chaotic. I asked her to leave everything in my desk drawer, thanked her and hung up. Monday started, like any other. I left for work before Sally woke up and Dave arrived shortly after me. I doubted he could stop by to see Sally without being noticeably late. The accounting report was mostly clean, except Dave was misusing his expense account by a couple $100 a month. Nothing major, but it set a bad example. Then I heard Debbie's heels down the hall. She smiled as she poked her head into my office, making the day feel a little brighter. Hello, boss. How are you today? She asked. I'm not sure. Yet I haven't read the investigator's report. Did you? She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I pulled out the report and quickly skimmed through it. My suspicions were confirmed. There was overwhelming evidence. I inserted the DVD and watched the footage. It started with Sally entering the motel room and kissing Dave. They undressed and had sex. I fast-forwarded to the next scene, which was from Thursday in the video. Sally told Dave, this is the end. I think we've been too careless. They both suspect something. We can't do this again. Dave agreed, saying it had been a wonderful 5 years. He joked about one last time, but Sally refused, saying she couldn't lose me. They kissed and left. Tears filled my eyes. Debbie shut the door and rushed to my side. John, are you okay? She asked. They're supposed to meet you here in 20 minutes. Do you want me to delay it? No, I said, give me a minute to wash my face. When is Mrs. Forrester expected? 5 or 10 minutes. After Sally and Dave arrive, Can you stall until then? Buzz me when she gets here and escort her and stay as a witness? You control the hidden cameras, right? Yes, I'll turn them on when they arrive. Good. The faster Mrs. Forrester comes in the better. Debbie smiled. You'll do just fine, Mr. Nelson. I guess you noticed the tissues I put around the room. She glanced at the clock. I need to get back to my desk. She peeked outside, then blew me a kiss. Be strong, boss. The door closed behind Debbie. 2 minutes later the buzzer rang and Dave and Sally entered. I pretended to be on a call, motioning for them to sit. I said, right, George, I'll let you know how it goes. By then the buzzer went off again. Debbie announced Mrs. Forrester is here. I welcomed Mary in and said, Mary, I thought you should be here since this affects you too. Sally and Dave exchanged nervous glances. I introduced Debbie as my temporary secretary and asked everyone to watch the TV monitor. I played the video of Sally meeting Dave at the motel. Sally screamed no and collapsed onto the floor. Dave glared at me saying, You, son of a Mary, interrupted. No, you're the son of a witch. David, be quiet. I want to hear this. After more footage. I stopped the video and turned to Mary. You need to see one more part. I showed the clip where Sally and Dave agreed to stop the affair, fearing they'd been caught. Sally was still crying on the floor. I said firmly, enough, Sally, it's too late. You need to hear this. It's about your future. I turned off the DVD and said, Sally, I will always love you, but I can never trust or live with you again. You'll be served with divorce papers as you leave. I looked at Mary. I'm sorry to drop this on you, but I think you had an idea. This was happening. Didn't you? Mary nodded. Yes, I did. I smelled Sally's perfume on Dave and knew something was off. I forgive you, John. I've already lined up a lawyer for this. I turned to Sally and Dave. Cheating is like stealing our wedding. Vows mean forsaking all others, and you both broke that trust in business. Trust is everything. I propose buying you both out, but I'll need time to gather the cash. If not, we sell the business and split the profits. We'll decide in 10 days. Any comments? Mary spoke first. The money Dave invested is mine. I'd like to stay as a silent partner. Dave's fired and has no home. Now I smiled. That makes things easier. I'll get the paperwork drawn up. Sally then asked John, can I keep my share and be a silent partner too? Just send me the dividends. Mary, I'm so sorry, I never meant for this. I was weak and threw away the best man in the world. My life is over. I sighed. Sally, you can keep the house. I'll move out soon. Sally left and I heard her being served divorce papers as her heels clicked down the hall. I turned to the window, tears in my eyes. After a few minutes, Debbie gently pulled on my arm and dabbed at my eyes with a tissue. Mr. John, are you all right? I smiled. It's hard to end 14 years of what I thought was a perfect marriage, but I'm relieved I can keep the business. Debbie smiled. I'm happy for both of us. Now you can keep your promise. I would have kept it somehow. How's the daycare project coming along? Debbie smiled and the tension I'd been feeling vanished. I've finalized all the figures and even found a retired nurse who'd love to run the daycare. She knows other RNs who would be interested in working part-time or full-time. I'd like to bring her in. I replied, that's your call. If she's a good fit, send her to Joanne in HR. Do you still have money left on the credit card? Yes, more than half. Good, use it to buy the equipment she needs. If the room requires modifications, arrange a meeting with all department heads, including Sally and Dave's assistants. Right afternoon in the conference room, I smiled and said, I'm putting a lot on your plate. Can you handle it? Yes, I can. I'll only ask for help, if necessary. Great. From now on, set up a daily morning meeting with me. Also, you're now my personal assistant. Find a secretary for yourself and give yourself a raise. She beamed, hugged me, and kissed my lips before pulling back, embarrassed. I'm so sorry I got excited. I laughed. Thank you for the kiss. I might have to promote you daily. She blushed and said seriously, I hope it's for more than just my kisses. Don't worry. I trust you'll do a great job. You'll be my eyes and ears to help run the business. Promoting Debbie was the best decision. I'd made she handled everything with efficiency, leaving me free to focus on what mattered. The daycare was set up in no time. A couple of weeks later, she walked into my office for our morning meeting looking professional in a new business suit. "Good morning, boss," Debbie said cheerfully as she walked into my office. "Good morning, Deb. How are you?" I asked, grinning. She replied, "Much better now that I'm here, thank you. Now meet my new assistant," Debbie said, pressing the intercom button. A tiny girl came bouncing into the room. "Here I am, Mommy," the girl exclaimed with excitement. Debbie smiled and introduced her. "This is my daughter, Dolly. Say good morning, like I taught you." Dolly curtsied sweetly and said, "Good morning, Mr. John. I'm pleased to meet you." Grinning, I replied, "Good morning, Miss Dolly. Are you enjoying the daycare?" "Oh, yes, it's fun and Mommy visits me lots," she said with a bright smile. I couldn't help but ask Dolly, "Have you ever been to the zoo?" Dolly looked up at Debbie, then back at me. "No, where the animals are good?" she asked innocently. I smiled at Debbie and turned to Dolly. "Well, I'd love to take you and your mommy to the zoo this Sunday, if you'd like." Dolly's eyes lit up and she excitedly asked her mom, "Mommy, can we go?" Realizing I'd spoken out of turn, I quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, Deb. I should have asked you first. Please forgive me." Debbie smiled warmly. "It's okay. You just got caught up in the moment." "Yes, we'd love to go. I'll pack a picnic." Debbie, "Do you have a car?" I asked, noticing the slight hesitation in her response. "No, mine broke down and I'm saving up for one." She explained. "As my personal assistant, you need a company car. I'll arrange everything this afternoon after lunch with you and Dolly." I offered. Sunday at the zoo was wonderful. Dolly was thrilled and I ended up carrying her for most of the day. Spending time with a child was more special than I had imagined, and I enjoyed Debbie's company too. The next day I arranged for a company car, a 2-year-old Honda Odyssey. I instructed our transportation chief to clean it up and park it in Dave's old spot, now reserved for Debbie. That afternoon, Debbie stopped by my office with Dolly, letting me know they were heading home. I playfully stuck out my lip in a pretend pout. Dolly's eyes widened as she tugged at her mom. "Mr. JN is crying." My Debbie and Dolly both asked. "What's wrong?" I smiled and replied, "Dolly didn't kiss me goodbye." Dolly giggled and ran over, arms outstretched. I lifted her laughing, and after she gave me a sweet kiss, I set her down. Then I handed Debbie a set of car keys. She looked at them puzzled. "You look so professional in your new suit, and you can't be seen riding the bus. These are the keys to your company car, parked in your new reserved spot," I said. Deb's eyes widened in surprise. "What, really?" "Yep. If you don't have a child seat for Dolly, get one. No, go on," I added with a grin. Debbie hesitated for a moment, then shook her head, scooped up Dolly, and left. The next morning, I saw her pull into the lot in the Honda minivan. When she noticed the coffee on her desk, she smiled, walked into my office, and quietly closed the door behind her without a word. She hugged me tightly and kissed me deeply before pulling back and asking, "Why are you so good to me?" I smiled at her. "Because you've earned it. The company runs smoother than ever, and honestly, being around you makes me happy." She looked up at me, searching my face. "Is that really true?" "Of course, you know, I don't lie," I reassured her. "John." She started hesitantly. "I need your help. I bought steaks in a grill, but I have no idea how to cook them. Can you show me tonight?" "Sure, I'd love to," I agreed. She hesitated again, then added, "And Dolly's been begging to have you over for dinner. She really likes you, and well, so do I." She blushed slightly. I smiled warmly about the minivan, though I can't accept it. Her brow furrowed. "You don't like it?" "We love it, but it's too much," I explained. "It's been sitting and used for a year. If you really don't want it, I'll get you something else," I offered. She laughed, shaking her head. Okay, I'll keep it. You sure know how to get your way." I chuckled. "Hey, you're the one who convinced me to set up a daycare. You're good at getting things done, just don't be mad at me." She said softly, I'm not mad. That's why I hired you to push me to do what's needed. You keep everything running smoothly. She giggled, clearly relieved it works. Doesn't it? I grinned. What time should I come over for dinner? How about right after you change? Oh, and the grill is still in the van. She reminded me I'll be there soon. I promised dinner that night was perfect. Steaks, baked potatoes and corn on the cob, all cooked on the grill. Afterwards Dolly and I played Go Fish and later we treated ourselves to ice cream at Dairy Queen. It was a fun messy evening and after helping put Dolly to bed Debbie and I shared a quiet glass of wine, I knew it was time to leave. Can I see you tomorrow? I asked, sensing something in the air. Debbie hesitated again, then said, John. We need to talk. A chill ran down my spine. I'm listening, I replied, worried-eyed. Overstepped. You always listen, but you're not hearing me. She said gently. I think I need to release you from your promise and find another job. My heart sank. Why? I thought you loved your job. I do, she admitted, but I feel like I owe you so much and I don't know how to repay you. I shook my head. You don't owe me anything. Deb, I've gained far more from you than you've given. She looked at me, clearly confused. How is that possible? I haven't given you anything. You've given me the most precious gift of all, time with you, and Dolly, your kindness has saved me. If I weren't so much older I'd court you with everything I've got. I paused, realizing the weight of what I'd just said. I probably shouldn't have said that. Her eyes softened as she looked at me intently. Are you telling me you love me but won't pursue me because of your age? Yes, I whispered. I love you with all my heart. As I poured my heart out, Debbie's face lit up with a big smile. She jumped into my lap and kissed me passionately, then showered my face with kisses. John, I love you too. Dolly loves you so much. I want you tonight, and I want to wake up with you in my bed to teach me about Z. I smiled as she kissed me again. I don't know much about Zex, she admitted, but you're the Zest man I've ever met. I fell in love with you the day I started working for you. She caressed my face, speaking softly. I meet lots of guys at school, but they're so immature. You're different, and I love that about you. I kissed her gently, then carried her to bed where we cuddled. John, I love this peaceful feeling after being close to you, she said, giggling. I hope you can dance as well as you love dance. Yes, I love dancing. I used to teach at Arthur Murray. I always dreamed of marrying a tall, strong, handsome man who danced with me into the sunset. Well, 3 out of 4 isn't bad. I joked. She smiled honestly. I'll skip the dancing for your love. I can't live without that, as I thought about what we needed to arrange. Marriage license, honeymoon, where we'd live. Debbie grinned knowingly. You're thinking about a solution, aren't you? I can help. I told her my thoughts and she smiled. Don't worry. I have it all planned. Go back to sleep. I tried to relax, but my mind was racing. She snuggled up to me and with a soft smile whispered, I love you so much. We can solve any problem together. I never want to sleep without you again. Do you have room for Dolly and me at your place? Yes, I live in a 3-bedroom condo. We can move you in today. She kissed my cheek and said, problem solved. Now I need to brush my teeth for a real kiss. When she returned wrapped in a towel, she grabbed a small notebook and slid back into bed. She flipped through it and showed me a page titled Marriage Information, which listed everything we needed to know, addresses, phone numbers, and even things like banking and insurance. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Since I first met you, she giggled. I couldn't sleep last night, so I got up and made the list. Give in to your urges, I teased. I love it. Everything went smoothly. We got married in my office that Monday, with Debbie, Dolly, a notary, and a few witnesses. Dolly was thrilled, wanting me to hold her constantly, and Debbie held my other arm. I couldn't have been happier. Debbie also trained a young man, Jeff, to take over her day-to-day tasks. He was athletic and about 30, which made me a bit uneasy, but I said nothing. The next morning I noticed Debbie spending a lot of time with Jeff. I visited Joanne in the secretarial pool and asked for a new assistant. She smiled knowing Elle and said, "I've got just the right person. She'll be in your office tomorrow, ready to help." That afternoon I went to check on some new wall section drawings for a building I was designing when I returned to my office near closing time. I found Debbie showing Jeff how the intercom system worked. Carrying Dolly, I said, "Hi Debbie, Dolly and I are ready to go. We'll be waiting in the atrium." Debbie quickly grabbed her jacket, looking adorable in her outfit. She had lost weight and was looking great. I decided she needed a shopping spree as we headed out. Asked where we were going, but I told her she'd find out soon. When we arrived at a high-end department store, her eyes widened. We got Dolly settled in her stroller and a shopper assistant named Jane greeted us. I explained that my wife needed a new wardrobe, including business, attire, casual clothes, and lingerie, and handed Jane a budget of $5,000. Debbie protested. "Don't I get a say in this?" I smiled. "You pick what you like and I'll tell you if I like it, but you're getting a new wardrobe tomorrow's Dolly's turn." The assistant grinned and led Debbie away. After 2 hours, I was dozing off with Dolly asleep in my arms when Debbie kissed me awake. "We're done for now and we'll return tomorrow." I got so much for under $2,500 back home. We unloaded 4 loads of boxes into Debbie's dressing room and I helped unpack. We ordered Chinese for dinner and Dolly loved the fortune cookies. When she handed me one, I read, "Your daddy will take you shopping for dresses tomorrow." Dolly's eyes lit up. "Is that for me?" she asked excitedly. The next day, both Debbie and Dolly got lots of new clothes. That evening Debbie showed me her favorite shopping site, and I let her spend an additional $1,000 on summer outfits. She looked amazing in everything she modeled and her happiness made it all worth it. After Dolly went to bed, I pulled Debbie into my lap and we kissed. I suggested, "Maybe it's time to call your mom and tell her about us." Debbie thought for a moment and then agreed. She called her mom, reconnecting after 3 years, and shared the news about Dolly and our marriage. They spoke for over an hour. After the call, Debbie, with fresh tears in her eyes, jumped into my lap and kissed me passionately. "Thank you, John. That was the right thing to do. Mom and Uncle Bill were so happy. They want us to visit soon." "Where do they live?" I asked. "Melrose, Florida, less than an hour away." I smiled. "How about we visit on Sunday?" She agreed, and after putting Dolly to bed, I went to kiss her goodnight. As I approached Doll's door, I overheard Debbie softly praying with her, asking God to bless their loved ones and keep them safe. Dolly added, "And Daddy too." Debbie smiled. "Yes, sweetie, Daddy. Most of all, we love him the most." I entered and hugged both of them. Dolly reached for me, and I picked her up, hugging and kissing her. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetie. Sleep well." Tears filled my eyes as she said, "I love Mommy and Daddy as much as I can." She was so sweet and I loved my girls deeply. The next morning, while I made breakfast, Debbie called her mom. She smiled as she told me, "We're all set for Sunday." On Saturday, our shopping trip was focused on finding outfits for the visit. Both Debbie and Dolly picked matching denim skirts, black turtlenecks and denim jackets. Dolly wore tights and boots, while Debbie opted for leggings and heeled boots. They both looked adorable. I wore jeans, a blue shirt and a navy blazer. Debbie guided me to her family's large home. As we pulled up, her mother and Uncle William greeted us warmly, while Debbie and her mom embraced. I introduced myself to Uncle William and introduced Dolly, who curtsied sweetly. Uncle William, with tears in his eyes, picked Dolly up to introduce her to her grandmother. But when her grandmother reached out, Dolly clung to me scared. I quietly reassured her, explaining that her mom's tears when talking about her mother were from missing her, not fear. Slowly, Dolly felt reassured and allowed her grandmother to hug her, breaking the tension. We moved inside and Dolly quickly warmed up to her grandmother. Debbie smiled at me, love in her eyes. Uncle William and I started talking, and he recognized me from a past business meeting. We ended up chatting about work and he admitted his regret over pushing Debbie to have an abortion, calling it his biggest mistake. I laughed and told him, "Debbie is a determined, intelligent woman. She's turned my business around in just a few months. Production and profits are up, and everyone loves working with her as the afternoon progressed. Granny asked if Dolly could stay with her for a few days, but Debbie and I agreed she was still too young truthfully. I wasn't ready to let her go just yet. Dolly spent half her time in daycare and the other half with us, becoming a beloved presence at the office. Debbie was an active manager, visiting every office daily, always asking questions and expecting solutions. Her smile lit up the office and her praise was cherished by everyone, but a frown from her was deeply felt. One day, Debbie noticed the new secretary at her old desk and entered my office frowning. She asked, "How's the new girl working out?" "She's fine," I joked, "but she doesn't kiss as well as you." Debbie teared up and I quickly reassured her. "I'm just teasing, you and Dolly have all my kisses forever." Her smile returned and she playfully asked, "What about hugs?" "Those two," I laughed. "That might change," she teased, hinting at it future. Babies. Later I saw Jeff checking out Debbie while she worked, and it bothered me. Later that day I overheard Jeff in the restroom bragging to a coworker about his intentions to pursue Debbie. Furious, I called Debbie into my office and asked her to fire Jeff. She was surprised, but didn't argue. A few hours later, Debbie confirmed she had fired him and we headed home together. On the way home, Debbie asked, "Aren't you going to ask if I fired Jeff?" I smiled. "Why wouldn't you?" She explained that one of the workers told her Jeff was spreading rumors about them. "Good call," I said, suggesting we promote the worker who gave her the tip. That night, as we prepared for dinner, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jeff pointing a weapon at me. He demanded to see his daughter, claiming Dolly was his. Debbie calmly corrected him, saying he was mistaken, and explained that Dolly wasn't his child. Jeff, confused, realized he had mixed Debbie up with someone else, as Jeff's attention shifted entirely to Debbie. I saw my chance. I quickly punched him in the head and he dropped the weapon, hitting the floor. I grabbed the revolver just as Debbie rushed over and kicked him hard in the groin, screaming at him. She kicked him in the head and face, yelling until a deputy arrived and pulled her back. Soon, several deputies were in the apartment. Jeff was handcuffed and we learned that the pizza delivery guy had seen Jeff with the weapon and called the police. After checking on Dolly, who was sound asleep, we gave statements. Jeff was charged with attack and several other crimes afterward. We sat down to eat but barely touched our food, mostly holding each other. Debbie, still in shock, said, "I don't even remember seeing him before he worked for us." I suggested she might have blocked the memory to avoid reliving the trauma of her attack. She nodded, unsure if she had ever seen his face clearly. Then she noticed my swollen hand. "We need to get ice on that," she said, bringing a bowl to help. She complimented me on how I handled Jeff, distracting him. I joked about how ballet slippers were a better choice than stilettos, otherwise she might have done real damage. Debbie got serious, saying, "No one threatens my family," and walks away unscathed. That night, I suggested we both get concealed weapon permits and look into self-defense training. Debbie knew of a place near Melrose for martial arts training and said she would set it up the next morning. After a restless night with my hand bandaged, Debbie mentioned she had already signed us up for a weapons safety course at a local shop. She surprised me by sharing how much experience she had with firearms thanks to her Uncle Bill, who had taught her to shoot various weapons. Later I showed Debbie my hidden weapon locker, letting her pick one for the class. She chose a small .22 revolver, smiling and saying she used to shoot one like it. She also picked up a Walther PPK in .380, saying it reminded her of her uncle's weapon. Debbie shared an old lesson from her father. It doesn't matter the caliber. If you strike the target in the right place, a miss with a bigger weapon is still a miss. I agreed, saying accuracy is key, no matter the weapon. We left work early, dropped Dolly off at Grandma's and headed to the martial arts center. After discussing our experience and concerns about having a toddler, the owner recommended a self-defense baton disguised as a flashlight. A quick wrist flick extended it to 21, and he offered a 1-hour class, which we signed up for, and we bought 2 batons. Next, we went to the weapon shop for our concealed weapons course. Deb practiced IED with both weapons and preferred the Walther PPK, becoming skilled at hitting the target consistently. She bought a clip-on holster and a few stylish purses designed to hold the PPK. I chose my Smith & Wesson .40 caliber, purchasing a fanny pack holster. We picked up our study materials and left at Grandma's. Uncle Bill showed me a homemade self-defense tool, a piece of rebar with nuts attached, and explained how it could be used for protection while looking harmless. I complimented his ingenuity. After the incident with Jeff, I upgraded our home security with hidden cameras and took Debbie to the shooting range several times. I taught her to shoot through a purse, simulating a real-life scenario where she couldn't pull the weapon out first. After some practice, she mastered it, even hitting targets from different positions and distances. Debbie became proficient at point shooting and impressed everyone at the range. She could rapid-fire 6 shots, all hitting the target. She was concerned about ruining her purse, but made adjustments to use it for training. I joked that if she were in an evening gown with a tiny clutch, she'd need my protection. She replied, "I always look to you for protection. You're my hero." The weapon shop owner watched Debbie's progress and remarked on her impressive skills. We both passed our written test and received our concealed carry permits. We kept practicing at the range, with Debbie becoming extremely accurate at close range, consistently scoring well. Debbie loved stopping by the range to practice, and her shooting skills and grace on the line attracted attention. She quickly became a standout, impressing everyone, including the rangmaster. One day, she took on a challenge to shoot at 2 targets on either side, hitting them flawlessly within 4 seconds. The rangemaster praised her, noting that she learned well to keep her weapon functional during critical moments. After a few more rounds, we left, but it was clear Debbie had become an impressive shooter, admired by all. We also bought her several holster purses, including a small clutch that could eject the pistol directly into her hand when needed. Debbie, often dressed in a way that turned heads with high heels, short skirts, and ZXY tops, and she knew I didn't mind others admiring her. It was fun for both of us. One afternoon, she came into my office, closed the door, and climbed into my lap. She kissed me and said, "I've stopped taking the pill and I want us to take a week-long vacation. Mama and Uncle Bill can watch Dolly. She's comfortable with them." Now I smiled and told her to plan it. Debbie excitedly shared we going to Grand Cayman, staying at a clothing optional resort. I laughed and asked about the cost. She reassured me it wasn't much and that she was mostly packed. Our vacation was great, though our experience in the clothing optional section didn't go as planned. After relaxing on the beach, we woke up to a small crowd watching us. A man approached, offering Debbie a role in an adult film, boasting it would make her big money. I stood up and told him she's a CEO making $99,000 a week. You'd have to beat that. The man was stunned. Back in our room, Debbie teased me, asking if she could star in the movie. I played along but made it clear I wouldn't allow it. We laughed about it, but she admitted she couldn't do that anyway. "I'd never let another man touch me," she said seriously. We kept the conversation light, teasing each other about the bizarre encounter. However, after some playful back and forth, Debbie joked about my size compared to the guy on the beach, which stung a bit more than I expected. Needing space, I left the room and wandered the resort, lost in thought. Eventually, I overheard Debbie talking to the man from the beach. He warned her that teasing a man about his size could have lasting damage. I listened, pained, as he explained how such remarks could ruin a relationship. Debbie cut him off, clearly worried, and hurried to find me. When she saw me sitting nearby, she ran into my arms, tears forming. We went back to our room, but I was still upset as I undressed. She asked with concern if my frustration was because of her teasing. I sighed, admitting that her comment had hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Debbie's face crumpled with tears, trying to explain through her sobs. I gently calmed her down and told her I overheard the conversation with the corn guy. Her eyes were still wet as she asked again if I was okay. "I'll do my best with my inferior equipment," I joked, blending humor with vulnerability. Debbie hugged me tightly, and after that the misunderstanding between us seemed to lift. We never saw the guy again. The rest of our honeymoon was relaxed and we made love often. Leaving Gr Cayman was bittersweet, but we were excited to return to Dolly when we called every day when we got home. Dolly ran to us screaming, "Mommy, Daddy. I missed you." She jumped into Debbie's arms, while I watched moved by their reunion. As I gathered our gifts, Dolly shouted, "Where's Daddy?" I scooped her up and we all hugged together, crying tears of joy. Deb's mom and Uncle Bill told us Dolly had been wonderful while we were away and that she was always welcome to stay with them. Dolly clung to us saying, "Don't leave me again," for a long time, and we promised we wouldn't back at work on Monday. Deb and her team had narrowed down candidates for a new engineer position. They hired 2 top contenders, Betty Johnson, a sharp young assistant professor, and Jamal Washington, a well-qualified and personable engineer. A couple of months after our honeymoon, Deb sat me and Dolly down at the kitchen table. She held her hands and smiled, telling us she had news from the doctor. I immediately feared the worst, but Deb reassured me with a laugh. "We're going to have a new family member soon," she said. Dolly excitedly guessed we were getting a puppy, but Debbie smiled and told her she was going to have a little brother or sister. Overjoyed, I scooped Dolly into my arms, spinning her around the kitchen, as we both cheered. "Mama's going to have a baby," Debbie watched, laughing through happy tears. We gathered around her, hugging and kissing, overwhelmed with love and joy. As I looked out the window trying to collect myself, the weight of becoming a father again hit me. I turned back, hugged Debbie and whispered, "Thank you for this precious gift." Debbie, eyes shining, whispered back, "This will be our child." A melding of the two of us. Dolly, ever curious, asked if we could get a puppy next time. Debbie laughed, explaining she was 2 months along and that it would be a while before she started to show. She then asked if I would attend birthing classes with her. "Of course," I said. "I'll go anywhere with you, my love." She rested her head on my chest and we talked about the months ahead, 7 more months of waiting, and then we would welcome a new addition to our family. As I looked at the little girl in front of us, my mind raced with worry. How would Debbie's small frame handle carrying our baby? I was bigger than Jeff, Dolly's biological father. What if the baby was too big, or if she had twins? I hadn't thought about this before, and now I feared for her safety. Debbie noticed my concern. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked gently. I pulled her close and whispered my fears. She reassured me that women's bodies are built to handle larger babies and modern medicine would address any complications. That's why I go for prenatal care. She said the doctor monitors everything. If necessary, they can induce labor or perform a section. I still wasn't completely convinced. "Not for you," I muttered, worried, sensing the tension. Dolly asked, "What's wrong, Mom? Why is Daddy crying?" Debbie smiled, brushing Dolly's hair. "Daddy's just being silly. He doesn't know how babies come out of Mommy's tummy. He's afraid it will hurt me." Dolly, with childlike innocence, said, "That's silly, Daddy. Mommy said it hurts a little, but mommies love their babies, so they don't mind." Debbie grinned at me, and we all hugged. Months passed and Deb's belly began to show. She was glowing, happier than ever, and said this pregnancy was better than her first, because this time she wasn't alone. She had a loving husband and everyone around her was supportive. One afternoon, Debbie, 7 months along, went to the bank while Dolly and I waited in the car. Suddenly I heard fire shots. I grabbed my pistol and saw Debbie on the curb, exchanging fire with 3 men. 2 were down and the car lurched toward her. I fired at the driver and the car crashed into a tree. Panicking, I rushed to Debbie, relieved to find her unhurt. We barely had time to catch our breath before more shots rang out from inside the bank. I started toward the bank, but Debbie grabbed my arm. "I'm coming with you," she insisted. Together, we approached the shattered glass doors. Inside, a man held a woman hostage. I took a shot, knocking him in the head, and he dropped. As I moved to check on the woman, another robber rose behind a desk. Debbie fired 2 quick shots, taking him down. After the police arrived, we handed over our weapons and were praised for saving lives. Debbie, calm but shaken, joked about ruining her pantyhose and purse. We headed home, exhausted and overwhelmed by the day's events. Later we saw ourselves on the news as the heroic husband and wife team who stopped the robbery. The reality of the situation hit us hard, and we both cried, realizing how close we had come to losing each other. The sheriff visited us the next morning to review security. Footage that captured everything. Watching it unfold again was surreal. Debbie had been calm and precise, taking down 2 of the robbers without missing a shot. The sheriff was amazed and praised her skills, saying not many deputies could have done what you did. He invited us to a press conference, and though we were exhausted, we agreed. Debbie blushed at the attention, but humbly said I was just doing what I had to do. The sheriff smiled. Well, you did it perfectly. You two make quite the team. The following months were a whirlwind of media attention. Debbie was flooded with offers for interviews, talk shows and product endorsements, from hair products to diapers. I had to step in to ensure she wasn't overwhelmed, limiting her activities, especially as her due date approached. I restricted any plans for the week before and 3 weeks after the baby was born, even limiting her communication to just family and close friends. Despite my efforts, Debbie insisted on working right up until she went into labor. She continued managing her work, though I had her hold meetings in her office. Instead of walking around Jamal, Washington was always her first appointment in the mornings, which started to irritate me one day. She mentioned visiting a few offices and asked if I'd watch Johnny. I suggested she keep having her meetings in her office, but she looked confused. I like to visit each office and see how things are going firsthand. She said, who do you see? First, I asked casually. Jamal. Of course, she replied. Why doesn't he report to Marty or Betty? I asked. She paused, thinking. I'm not sure, that's just how it's been. I like it. I said he should be reporting to his boss. Not you. Debbie considered my words. Then smiled. I'll take care of it. She said. I was relieved. Good, keeps things in the proper chain of command and no one will think he's getting special treatment. Debbie raised an eyebrow. Including you? Yep, I said, smiling. Debbie playfully flipped me off and laughed. Oh. Stop it. Months later, we held our company's annual beach party at my property near Daytona. It was an adults-only event, so Dolly and Johnny stayed with Grandma. The party was a hit, but I noticed Jamal was always around Debbie and it started bothering me. It seemed like she was avoiding me, and my frustration grew. Betty, who was helping with the food, noticed my mood. What's wrong? She asked. I sighed. I need a walk to clear my head. I muttered. I wandered along the beach, my mind racing with doubts. Could Debbie be interested in Jamal? I couldn't bear the thought of losing her after some time. I sat on a log lost in thought when I heard voices and saw Debbie approaching with Betty. Are you just going to sit there until the water reaches you? Debbie asked. I don't know, I muttered, still staring at the ocean. Debbie knelt beside me. Betty told me, you were upset about Jamal and me, John. I love only you. There's nothing between Jamal and me, and there never will be. You're stuck with me forever. I looked at her, confused and hurt. But you spend so much time with him. What am I supposed to think? Debbie sighed. I've been helping him through a rough time. He's in love with someone and it's tearing him up because they don't love him back. Who is he in love with? I asked. Debbie hesitated, then said softly, you. I froze me. I asked, stunned. Debbie nodded. Yes, John, he's admired you since he started working for us. Heck, not interested in me. He's been spending time with me to be near you. I was shocked. It all started to make sense the way Jamal acted around me, but I had misread it completely. I feel like a fool. I admitted. Debbie squeezed my hand. Don't, it's normal to feel the way you did, but now you know the truth. So what do we do now? I asked. Debbie thought for a moment. We'll talk to Jamal. He's done a great job, but he'll need to report to Marty or Betty from now on. It will keep everything clear. I nodded, relieved. That sounds like the right plan. Debbie smiled. And you won't have to worry about me spending too much time with him anymore. I chuckled. Thank God for that. We returned to the party where Betty was waiting. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah, better than ever. I said. Debbie grinned. We've sorted everything out. Jamal will report to Marty from now on. Betty smiled. That's good to hear. Later, after the party, Debbie and I sat together at home. This made me realize something. She said. What? That I asked. I need to be better at communicating with you. I should have told you about Jamal sooner. I kissed her head and I should have spoken up instead of letting it bother me. She smiled. We've learned now. Yes, we're in this together. I agreed that night as we went to bed. I held her close, grateful for the love and trust we shared. Everything was back where it needed to be. I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me. So, thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.